Maybe you've heard that CrossFit exercises are dangerous. Well, in this episode of the podcast, we're going to give you the real talk and talk about three more super controversial exercises that come up in CrossFit and tell you what you really need to know. What's really dangerous? What is not? How does it pertain to you? What do you need to know so you can do CrossFit and be safe? Tune in and take notes.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
What's up? I'm Coach G, one of the coaching team here at CrossFit Edwardsville. And if you are listening to this episode, you've seen the headline, What CrossFit Exercises Are Too Dangerous? You're either actively involved in CrossFit and you want to know how to do these exercises or how to navigate your way through CrossFit world safely, or maybe you're not yet in CrossFit world. Maybe you're CrossFit curious, you're intrigued by the workouts, the concept. You know that the athletes that do CrossFit are in incredible shape. Maybe you want to look like they look. Maybe you want to be functionally fit and capable to be your best self, but you're intrigued, you're curious, but you're also concerned. You don't want to put yourself in harm's way. You don't want to get hurt unnecessarily. And I want to say from all of us here at CrossFit Edwardsville to you, we totally get it, because we recognize that longevity in this sport, or longevity in any sport, is largely dependent on, do you do smart, safe training over time? Consistently? Do you choose exercises that advance your goals and perform them with great form? And if all of those things are a concern to you, you're in the right place, because here at CrossFit Edwardsville, the entire coaching team are very committed, real sticklers about form, and very careful with exercise selection, because not all exercises are created equal. So in this episode, we're going to address three more categories of exercises that tend to be very controversial, especially amongst people who are outside of CrossFit world and maybe not very educated about exercise. But we'll tell you what you need to know about these exercises in today's episode so that you can proceed intelligently, safely, and have the best possible CrossFit experience. So let's go right up to maybe the most controversial exercise in all of CrossFit world, the kipping pull-up. If you haven't heard, kipping pull-ups are a gymnastics style of pull-up where you use your whole body as a coordinated unit to do a coordinated series of flexion and extension movements to do a pull-up, and a lot of times to do more pull-ups than you can do when you do them strict. And I want to really call your attention to this, because so many people who are not in CrossFit world, and really like a lot of people in bodybuilding world, point to this as, what muscle is that exercise working? This doesn't look like a strict pull-up. It's different. It's weird. It must be bad. What's fascinating, though, is that this is a gymnastics activity, gymnastics exercise. And if you've ever been in gymnastics, you know that kipping and kipping pulling is literally an everyday part of the activity. If you've ever been in gymnastics, you're well aware that there is nothing threatening or dangerous or unusual or out of left field. There's nothing wild about kipping pull-ups. It's literally as regular in gymnastics world as a crossover dribble in basketball, or a Russian tie in wrestling, or a single leg takedown in wrestling. It's literally an everyday occurrence. But people who come maybe from bodybuilding world, where you want to do exercises very strict to isolate certain muscles, often don't understand the rationale behind kipping pull-ups. And if you're training as a functional athlete, you're training because you're not trying to necessarily isolate muscles. You're not going to the gym as a bodybuilding endeavor. Kipping pull-ups might look like something alien or foreign to you. So the more that you learn about this, the more you realize this is just a very, very regular, it's a different, but it's a regular way of training gymnastics exercises, and entirely safe if you have a certain list of prerequisites met. Your CrossFit coach can talk to you about that, but for the people that can meet the prerequisites of kipping pull-ups, it is a very safe exercise. The prerequisites include certain kinds of strength, certain kinds of flexibility, and are very individual. But globally speaking, kipping pull-ups should not be considered to be dangerous or unusual. The more educated you are about gymnastics, the more unscary this is. Now, that said, not everybody wants to do kipping pull-ups. I find it very interesting and noteworthy that in CrossFit world, even here at CrossFit Edwardsville, we have a lot of athletes that just opt to not do kipping pull-ups. They prefer to do strict pull-ups. They prefer to do strict chin-ups. And that's fine, because the truth of the matter is that strict pull-ups, strict chin-ups, butterfly pull-ups, kipping pull-ups, all of them have real value. And the specifics, the nuances, maybe one or more of these is a better match for you given your fitness goals. So if anybody has told you you shouldn't do CrossFit because of kipping pull-ups, they are grossly misinformed. Nobody in CrossFit is required to do kipping pull-ups. It's a choice. And again, if you meet certain prerequisites, it's a very safe activity to do. You're learning a gymnastics exercise if you choose to do that, but it is entirely safe. And like I said, you don't have to do them at all. We got lots of athletes at CFE that prefer other versions of pull-ups because it better matches their goals, and that's fine. So number one, kipping pull-ups. Hopefully we've shed some light on that matter. Let's go to the second highly controversial topic, sumo deadlift high pulls. Sumo deadlift high pulls. And if you hear me say all of those words and your reaction is, what in the heck is that? Exactly. Sumo deadlift high pulls are one of the exercises that, while it's in CrossFit world, isn't done all that often, and for good reason. While it is a full body movement, it's often argued by knowledgeable people in CrossFit that it is less transferable, less functional than other exercises that we do, i.e. the carryover to sports or combat or life might not be as good as other exercises. Additionally, as a physical therapist myself, I can say that a piece of this movement, the high pull piece, actually does replicate a test that we do in physical therapy world to identify certain kinds of shoulder dysfunction. Meaning this particular exercise, the sumo deadlift high pull, it might reproduce pain in somebody that has a certain kind of shoulder dysfunction. So maybe it's not an exercise for everybody. And there are plenty of people in CrossFit, I might be one, that would argue more often than not, it's not even the best use of your time in the gym. There are way more useful exercises, way more valuable exercises. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it is inherently unsafe. It's so much less valuable in terms of return on investment, and so much more potentially problematic for certain people that it's rarely programmed as a piece of a workout at our gym. And when it is programmed in a very unique and specific way where only the right people would be doing this movement, and only in specific ways. So as long as you have an intelligent coach, a knowledgeable coach with thoughtful, intelligent workout programming, you may rarely see sumo deadlift high pulls. And if you do, they'll be very carefully prescribed or dosed to the athletes. Again, if you've never even heard of this thing, is probably because it's not done a whole lot for all the reasons I discussed here. Exercise number 2, super controversial, often cited as potentially dangerous, the sumo deadlift high pull. And finally, we go today to category 3, Olympic lifts. Many critics of CrossFit criticize CrossFit's use or inclusion of Olympic lifts in what they consider to be high volume rep counts, like 5 reps, 10 reps, 15 reps in a set. What's crazy is that if you take a barbell exercise in bodybuilding world, doing sets of 10, 15 reps is very, very, very normal as a way of adding muscle to the body. Very normal. But it's wild how some people have this misconception that if it's a barbell clean, a barbell jerk, a barbell snatch, all of a sudden its only utility, its only value is in sets of 1 to 3 reps. And that just simply isn't the case. Critics of it say these exercises are meant to be done for 1 to 3 reps, and doing it for more reps is bad. That is not true. It is only bad to do lots of reps of a thing if you can't do it with proper form. That's true for anything. You shouldn't be doing lots of push-ups if your form is terrible. You shouldn't be doing lots of any exercise if your form is terrible. One of the great things about having a high level, a quality CrossFit coach is that they will teach you the most entry level, accessible versions of a clean, of a jerk, or accessories that are very similar to them. So you can do an exercise that is simple enough for you to fully embrace when you are new in CrossFit. So you can do sets of 5 reps, 10 reps with great form and safely and get the benefits, whether it be developing muscle stamina, developing speed and power, even adding great muscle to your body. It is a complete fallacy that Olympic lifts can't be done for more than 1 to 3 reps safely. In fact, most people that only do Olympic lifts often have complexes that they do as part of their regular everyday training, where they're doing several Olympic lift movements all in a series. Why? Because it's useful for building the skill of that movement. It's useful for building the strength, the power, the speed, the explosiveness you need for that movement. So it's almost always people who are not in Olympic weightlifting that have a criticism about the use of Olympic weightlifting. Quite interesting to me. But if you have a coach that really cares, a coach that requires you to go through a regular onboarding, hey, you're new to all of this, let's take you through a fundamentals program, an onboarding program, some sort of on-ramp program. If your coach has that, if your CrossFit gym requires that, and one of the things that they do is teach you the simplest, easiest, most accessible versions of Olympic lifts, you're in good hands. You have a coach that cares about smart progression, starting with simple, starting with level 1, and over time, gradually doing more advanced versions of the lifts as your skill dictates and as your goals require. None of this has to be unsafe at all. In fact, it can be wonderfully enjoyable. I've seen over decades now of CrossFit that it's often defined this particular set of exercises the most rewarding because it lets them feel strong and powerful in a way that a non-weightlifting activity just can't do. There is so much benefit to Olympic lifts, especially if they're approached in a smart, systematic, progressive way where you're guided by a coach who knows what they're doing and requires you to start with the basics first. Does not have to be unsafe. So in today's episode, we have discussed number 1, kipping pull-ups, number 2, sumo deadlift high pulls, number 3, Olympic lifts. And hopefully what we've done is we've dispelled the myths and given you guys what you really need to know. So if you're in CrossFit now, you can be safe and have an amazing, enjoyable fitness journey. Or if you're not in CrossFit, you've learned a little bit more about how to screen for a CrossFit gym that will deliver you a top-tier, safe experience. We'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think are the most controversial, most dangerous exercises? Tell us in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about it. You can even give us some fresh ideas for our next episode of the podcast. For now, it's Coach G signing off, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.